I have been diagnosed for 2 years this April, and I was 31 when I got diagnosed. So I'd originally gone to my GP because I was feeling really tired all the time. I was very lethargic, and I thought maybe I was just deficient in something like vitamin B or something like that. So yeah, the tiredness was probably my biggest symptom, and then I've probably always peed quite a lot since I was younger anyway, so that wasn't like a new symptom or anything for me. So I gone in and asked my doctor for just a kind of like check up, and asked him to take a full panel of bloods. And then I came in to get my results maybe a week or two later, and he said I was diabetic. So then he said, you've been pre-diabetic for probably a couple of years, when he went back for my blood work, but nobody had kind of told me, so that was a little bit frustrating. So originally he didn't think that I had type 2, he thought that it might have been a type called MODY, so it's like an in-between kind of diabetic diagnosis, I guess. So it wasn't until maybe last year that I probably got diagnosed as type 2, when they said they weren't going to investigate MODY anymore. Within the first probably week or two of getting diagnosed, that was probably the most overwhelming part of being diagnosed in the last 2 years. That's the bit that I probably found the most difficult, because I got maybe 4 or 5 appointments in the first kind of 2 weeks, and then because I'm quite young and I'm diabetic, I've been held with the diabetic centre, whereas most older people who get diagnosed, their GP just manages that. So I'm still held at the centre for mine, so I go in probably once every 6 months to go and see the nurse. I still see the dietitian quite regularly, whereas most older people who are diagnosed don't do that. So yeah, I feel like it's a part of my normal life, I guess, now, but I would say it's for the younger, because I'm quite young, that's the bit I found quite difficult as well, because most of my friends can go out and do normal stuff, and whereas before I go out I have to kind of plan what I'm going to eat as much as I can. I have to match my insulin to how much I'm going to eat. If I want to have any alcohol, for instance, I have to make sure that I pair it with food, because if you drink alcohol then your blood can crash really, really quickly. So yeah, that was, I would say, just the social aspect. I think that's probably the bit I found the most difficult, for sure.
And can you run through what you would do then, actually, when you're going out on if it's a night out that's an impact for you?
Yeah, so because I'm insulin dependent for mine at the moment, so if I'm going out, I just need to make sure, I would never drink on an empty, we shouldn't drink on an empty stomach anyway, but for me it's more important, so that alcohol is not just hitting my bloodstream really quickly. So I'll always make sure I pair it with, if I can have quite a big meal, if I'm going to have alcohol as well. And then all I do is I've just got to keep an eye. So I've got a Freestyle Libre sensor. So all I'll do is I'll make sure that I keep an eye on that. I've got to take my insulin anywhere really between 30 minutes to kind of 10 minutes before I eat. And then I have to try and work out how big my meal is going to be, and then how many insulin units I'll need. And then if it's high throughout the night, I can just take a correction dose if I need to. So I'll just have to keep an eye on it for the rest of the night, and make sure that if I can, drink plenty of water in between, and just making sure that I pair anything with food.
And what about going forward into the future? How do you see things developing? Will it remain stable for you?
So my blood sugar is pretty good at the moment. My HbA1c at the moment is back in pre-diabetic range. So I've worked really hard over the last kind of 2 years to get back into that. So my HbA1c is actually quite low, considering I'm insulin dependent. So if I can move off insulin over the next couple of months, and I won't have to wear my sensor anymore, and I can just be medication controlled, then that's what I want to do over the next couple of months, hopefully. That's my goal, is to not need the insulin anymore, and just to have meds controlled and diet kind of controlled instead.
What would you say to somebody who had similar symptoms to you then? Would you say go to your GP and there's nothing to be worried about?
No, I would say I only went to my GP, like I said, because I was really tired, all the time. I was so lethargic, and I could eat a massive meal and I'd be asleep. And it doesn't, when your blood sugar is really high, when you feel drowsy, it's not like you can just take a quick nap. For me, I would go into quite a deep sleep, and then I would feel really groggy when I woke up because you've been asleep. And I was starving all the time as well. So one time we went to KFC for dinner, before I knew I was diabetic, and then I would say within the hour or something, I felt like I'd not eaten anything for the entire day, I was starving. So when I went to my GP, I said, I'm hungry all the time, and I'm just tired. And so I used to pee a lot when I was little illness, that wasn't a new symptom for me. And then they might ask you stuff like, are you quite thirsty and stuff like that, because that can be a symptom of high blood sugar as well if you're like excessively thirsty all the time. But I would say just go and get checked. Like, I only went to get checked because I was tired and I was worried that I was deficient in like maybe a vitamin or something like that. But my doctor was really lovely. He wasn't like, he didn't make me feel bad. I think that literally the first thing I said to him when he said you're type 2, I said, is that something that I've caused? And he was very, very good. He said, obviously a bad diet can exacerbate symptoms, but if you're predisposed to it, which most type 2 people are, there's not going to be a lot you can do about that. You either are going to get it or you're not. So yeah, my GP was really good with mine.
And tell us a little bit what you do now for Diabetes Jersey for the charity. I believe you've got a support group.
Yes, so I first got involved with the charity probably in the summer last year. So because they didn't know if I was type 1 or type 2 yet, so I'd actually contacted Liz, who is the type 1 rep, after Bill gave me her contact details. And then a couple of weeks later, after I was kind of messaging Liz to see whether I could maybe join her support group in the meantime, when I got told I was type 2, Liz said, we don't have a type 2 representative for the charity or anything. And we've not had one in a really long time. So I got back in contact with Bill and said, I would love to, is there a role kind of for me? If you've got a type 1 rep, I would love to do the type 2 stuff. Because when I got diagnosed, the biggest thing that I felt is because I was really young, I felt like probably the only islander in Jersey that's type 2 diabetic. Like, obviously none of my friends are diabetic. It's not in my wider family. I didn't have colleagues who were type 2 that I knew were type 2, and I think probably assumed that it was more of like a thing you get when you're older, when your lifestyle is really bad and stuff. And so for me, I felt really isolated, I think particularly because I was quite young as well, and I didn't know anyone that had type 2. So when I spoke to Bill about the type 2 representative, I said, for me, this is exactly how I felt, and I imagine for lots of other islanders, probably they will feel exactly the same way. It can be quite isolating, and I think people are embarrassed to tell people that they're type 2. So even sometimes I might go up to meet a new nurse at the diabetic centre, and the first thing they'll say is, you don't look like what we thought you were going to look like when we learned that you're type 2. And that's like a health professional. So imagine how much I get that from just normal members of the public. Like if I tell a family at work that I'm diabetic or something, if they see me checking my sensor, sometimes they'll say, are you type 1? Immediately, because I've got a sensor and because I'm quite young, they say, you must be type 1. I've had people say, no, you should go back to your doctor and say that you're not type 2 and you want to get retested for type 1. And so that can be a bit frustrating. So
what happens, when's your support group?
So my support group runs every probably 4 to 6 weeks. So the Butterfly Cafe hosts us in town, so they have been doing that probably since, I think maybe last August we had our first group. So there's a really small group of us at the moment. They're all different ages, males and females. There's just a very small group, and so all we do is we meet for coffee. It's usually at 10 on a Saturday. The cafe will cook us. Sometimes they might just, I don't know, they've done a sugar-free flapjacks and cupcakes and stuff before. Usually we just get a croissant each, and it's like, I know that people will say, why are you going for type 2, like coffees, and then you're having croissants? But for them, that might be the only time in 6 weeks where they have something like that to eat. And actually it's like a non-judgmental space where we all know that we're type 2. It's fine for us to have a croissant, or if we want to have a coffee or whatever. So all we do is we sit, it's usually between an hour or two long, just depending on how chatty everyone is. And all they do is sometimes we share like recipe things. Sometimes they might talk about what medication they're on. They might talk about their experience of the centre. A lot of the group is mainly just there. They ask each other for like advice, and then I just facilitate that and I join in, when it's necessary and stuff like that. So yeah, the group is really small at the moment. It's really non-judgmental. The same group have been coming since August, and actually like the feedback I get from them has been really positive. So it's a nice safe space where they don't feel judged, and it's nice for other type 2 people to talk to other type 2 people so that they can have a look at what their experience is and they can share that, and it just doesn't make them feel as isolated and alone, which is the exact reason why I asked if I could join the charity to start with.